right? Biblical Judaism to Rabbinic Judaism. I'm sure you're all familiar with this, right? I mean, you read the words of the prophets, you read Nevi'im, and then you read the Gemara, and it's like two religions. It's like right? Which is why, throughout the generations, people were wary of Tanakh. Because Rav Kook says it was much more safe throughout the generations. What kept us grounded is learning, is Torah learning. And that is what keeps a person grounded. That's what brings God into you, into your Chabad. That grounds you. And Chabad, the Alter Rebbe, the Tanya, which we're not going to talk at length about, but what the Alter Rebbe revealed to the world is the opposite of Rebbe Nachman. The Alter Rebbe wanted to take that light of Mashiach, that infinite light of the Emun of the Baal Shem Tov, that's completely beyond understanding, and understand it. Tanya is the revolutionary idea of bringing that infinite light of Emunah, of the soul that's beyond intellect, and understand it. That's Chabad. Breslov is the opposite. It's letting go. So when you learn Breslov, what we're looking for, and again, I forgot to, and so Rav Kook says that throughout the generations, the sages, our Chazal, were very much, we stressed understanding, Torah learning, cognitive learning. But Rav Kook says that's why the generation in Orot, Rav Kook writes in Orot, it's fascinating, he's writing this in the 1920s, I'm still in the 20s now. 100 years ago, Rav Kook wrote in Orot that's why the generation before Mashiach comes, the imaginative faculty in the world, in secular society, is going to be so developed. Arts, theater, literature, all these things, obviously movies and stuff, and until this day, it becomes more developed. Previous generations, their mind was never as stimulated as much as we are just walking down the street once in Manhattan, right? Because the Rav Kook says the deeper meaning of that is because we have to once again arouse that part of the mind of the seed of prophecy to prepare for Mashiach. That part of the mind that's beyond intellect to be able to receive the prophecy of Hashem. So Rav Kook says that's why it's important to now work on art in a holy way. That's why Rav Kook, that's what he spoke about when he opened up Betzalel. In Yerushalayim, Rav Kook was the one that pushed that there should be an art school, a Torah, because Betzalel, of course, is the one that built the Mishkan. Because Rav Kook held that in the generation before Mashiach comes, we have to use those faculties, the imaginative faculties, the super rational faculties, right? The intuitive. The philosophers, the German idealists, call it intellectual intuition. Intellectual intuition. In other words, the part of the intellect that's intuitive. Art is releasing, is going beyond, transcending what I know, what I could grasp. That's what art is, right? Music, it's not understanding. If you sit in an opera or a symphony and you try to understand something, you're going to get very frustrated very quickly. That's why people that, you either relax when you listen to music or you have no patience to listen to music. Because to be able to really listen to music, you have to let go. You have to let go of mind and you have to be into the music. So if you can't get in that space, then music could be really annoying and you have no patience for it. But if you can get into that space, that's what it means. You relax your mind. That's what art is. Art is relaxing the mind. That's why in philosophy, in Hegel and Schopenhauer, the mind is always considered there's there's science, art, and religion. Science, art, and religion, which is understanding, right? Is science. Art is beyond letting go of the mind. And religion is God that's even beyond that. That's beyond negative theology as well. So the point I'm just making is that when you learn Breslov, it's not so much like, you're looking to have an understanding of a whole system of philosophy, like in Chabad, for instance. In Breslov, it's more resonance. It's more imaginative resonance. Rebbe Nachman wanted to begin that rectification of prophecy now of imaginative resonance. So when he tells you that clapping, when you clap when you're in davening in Eretz Yisrael, he tells you when you breathe, right? He has a Torah where he speaks about how the lungs are like the kruvim on the Ark in the Holy of Holies. that the two lungs are always blowing, the heart is on fire, and if it wouldn't be for the heart, Rebbe Nachman gets very physiological. Rebbe Nachman talks about breathing and the circulatory system, digestive system, mamish, right? He talks that the lungs, if they weren't blowing air on the heart, then it would be burned up, and so too, like the kruvim, like the cherubs in the Holy of Holies, on top of the ark are blowing, this whole like imaginative thing, and I remember years ago, I used to be like, what the heck does that mean? It doesn't mean anything. It's like reading a poem and saying, what does it mean? A poem is specifically not supposed to mean something per se. It's supposed to be beyond. No, it means something, but it's not supposed to be understandable per se. It's supposed to be speaking to you on a level that's deeper than understanding. It's supposed to touch you. You're supposed to feel it. It's supposed to be a resonance to it. So, Likkutei Maharan, when you learn Rebbe Nachman, that has to be the approach. And the reason I'm saying it, because just like I said, I'm not an expert in Likkutei Maharan, but I think I understand at least, which is sort of an oxymoron, but that's okay. But I think I don't know if I should say understood, but I finally accepted the ability to let go enough to not try to understand it in the way that we're used to understanding, but really try to have a resonance with it, what Rebbe Nachman is saying, as points. That's why his sefer is not in any order. The Likkutei Maharan has no order. That's why we're starting with number 64. There's no order in the book, as the opposite of Tanya. Tanya is literally built very structured, very structured. You could spend 50, 60 years, and people do, trying to learn Tanya again and again to understand the structure and deeper layers of understanding that the Alter Rebbe puts in every single word of Tanya. Because again, the Alter Rebbe is his shita of Chassidus is bringing the Baal Shem Tov into intellect. So it's all structure. Into what Kant would call the categories of understanding. Right? But Rebbe Nachman is the opposite. Rebbe Nachman is to let go of that. Rebbe Nachman is, and therefore there's no order. There's no order to, it's like Bechlal Torah. Someone would say to you, how do you start learning Torah? What do you start with? What's the first thing you're supposed to learn when you learn Torah? It's a ridiculous question. That there's no beginning and end. What do you mean? Is it Bereshit? Is it Shema? Is it Torah Tzivlanu Moshe? Is it Mei Moskar no Shema? I mean, we could go on and on. Because Torah, there's no beginning and end. It's infinite. Again, the Alter Rebbe wants to make structure. Chabad is making structure, which is, by the way, also sociologically. I don't want to spend too much time on it, but you understand sociologically the difference between Chabad and Breslov comes out from this epistemological difference. Think about it for a second. Breslov tells you run out to the forest and talk to God for 3 hours. Chabad tells you go to India, open up a Chabad house with all the laws of the land and speak in the language over there, and have a suit and tie and within the world to bring God. The Rebbe held you have to bring God into the world, like the Alter Rebbe said you have to bring God into intellect. It's on purpose. It's the same idea. It's to bring the infinite into the finite. So the Rebbe held to bring Mashiach brings to God into all these places in the world. Right? And Breslov is the opposite, run away from the world. It's very hard to be a Breslover in the city. It's much easier to be a Breslover in Tzvat. So therefore that's sociologically the difference also between Chabad and Breslov. That's why there is such a difference in the way they act, in the behavior, in the shita. And it's mamish, that's the idea. Is it focusing on going in that place of infinity, or is it bringing the infinity into the finite?